For over 2,000 years, it has been the greatest mystery of all time, a whispered legend of a magnificent empire that sank beneath the waves. In a single day and night of misfortune, a story so grand, so tragic, that it has captivated philosophers, explorers, scientists, and dreamers for centuries. We are talking, of course, about Atlantis. For most, it is a myth, a philosophical allegory penned by the ancient Greek philosopher Plato to illustrate the dangers of hubris and the ideal state. But what if we told you that the tide of history is turning? What if the sands of time and the depths of the ocean are finally giving up their secrets? This is not a video about a fairy tale. This is the story of a discovery, a convergence of evidence from geology, archaeology, and ancient texts that points to a startling, undeniable conclusion. Atlantis was real. Forget everything you thought you knew about this lost civilization being a mere fantasy. We are about to embark on a journey that will take us from the dusty scrolls of ancient Greece to the cutting-edge satellite imagery of the 21st century, piecing together a puzzle that suggests a highly advanced society was wiped from the face of the earth by a cataclysm of unimaginable scale. The legend is no longer just a legend. It is a historical crime scene, and we have finally found the evidence that cracks the case wide open. The veil of mystery is being lifted, and the truth is more incredible, more terrifying, and more profound than you could possibly imagine. Prepare to have your perception of ancient history forever altered. To understand the discovery, we must first return to the source, the works of Plato, written around 360 BCE. In his dialogues, the Timaeus and the Critias, Plato provides our only detailed description of Atlantis, and it is far more specific and technical than a simple fable. He describes it as a powerful naval empire that existed 9,000 years before his own time, located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which we know today as the Strait of Gibraltar. This places it squarely in the Atlantic Ocean. Plato's Atlantis was a marvel of engineering and governance. Its central city was composed of concentric rings of land and water, connected by great canals and bridges. The city was protected by walls plated with precious metals like brass, tin, and the mysterious red-colored metal orichalcum. At its heart stood a magnificent temple dedicated to the god Poseidon. The Atlanteans were a race of great engineers, sailors, and warriors who eventually became corrupt with power and pride. They launched a war against the prehistoric nations of the Mediterranean, including a prehistoric Athens. It was after their defeat by the Athenians that the gods, angered by their arrogance, sent violent earthquakes and floods that sank Atlantis into the sea in a single, catastrophic day and night. For centuries, scholars have dismissed this as pure fiction, a story Plato invented to make a point. But what if Plato was recording a genuine, albeit ancient, historical tradition? What if he was preserving the memory of a real cataclysm that wiped out a real civilization? A memory so traumatic it was passed down through generations until it reached him? The details he provides are not those of a whimsical storyteller, but of someone describing a real place with real, tangible features. For a civilization to vanish in a day and night, the cataclysm must have been biblical in proportion, and geology provides us with a candidate so perfect. It seems ripped from the pages of Plato's account, the Minoan eruption of the Thera volcano. Around 1600 BCE, the island of Thera, modern-day Santorini in the Aegean Sea, was home to a thriving, advanced Bronze Age culture closely linked to the Minoan civilization on Crete. This was not a simple volcanic burp. It was one of the largest volcanic eruptions in human history, estimated to be 4 times more powerful than the infamous Krakatoa eruption. The cataclysm would have been unimaginable. The initial explosion would have been heard across continents. Tsunamis, with waves estimated to be over 100 feet high, radiated outwards, obliterating coastal cities across the Mediterranean, with the Minoan settlements on Crete taking the full force of the devastation. The sky would have darkened for weeks, and the global climate would have been affected for years by the volcanic ash in the atmosphere. The entire Minoan civilization, a seafaring empire of unparalleled sophistication for its time, with magnificent palace complexes, advanced plumbing, and a mysterious writing system, collapsed almost overnight. The parallels are staggering. A powerful, advanced maritime empire, brought low by a sudden geological catastrophe involving earthquakes and floods. But if Thera is the inspiration for Atlantis, why is it in the Mediterranean and not the Atlantic? This is where our investigation takes a crucial turn, challenging the traditional interpretation of Plato's text and looking at a different, even more plausible location for the true heart of the Atlantean Empire. What if we've been looking in the wrong ocean? What if beyond the Pillars of Hercules was a misinterpretation? Or a later addition? A growing body of evidence now points to a location that matches Plato's description with an almost eerie precision, but it's not underwater. It's in the middle of the Sahara Desert in Mauritania. This is the Richat structure, also known as the Eye of the Sahara. From space, it appears as a massive circular bullseye. For decades, it was thought to be a geological oddity, an impact crater. However, closer examination reveals something astonishing. The Richat structure features multiple, precise concentric rings, exactly as Plato described for the capital city of Atlantis. Satellite imagery and on-the-ground surveys show the remnants of what appear to be massive, artificial channels and waterways connecting these rings. The dimensions of the outer rings are a near-perfect match for the measurements Plato gave for the city of Atlantis. Even more compellingly, the surrounding geography aligns with Plato's description of a great plain to the south, protected by large mountains to the north. This was not always a desert. Around 12,000 years ago, during the period Plato dates Atlantis, the Sahara was a green, lush savanna with vast rivers and lakes. A sophisticated civilization could have thrived here. The geological evidence suggests that this region underwent a dramatic climate shift, turning from a paradise into a desert over millennia. But what if a sudden catastrophic event accelerated that process? The pieces of the puzzle are beginning to fit together in a way that is impossible to ignore. So we have a potential location that fits the physical description. But how does a civilization in the Sahara get destroyed by floods and earthquakes? This is where one of the most controversial and groundbreaking theories in modern science comes into play. The Younger Dryas Impact Hypothesis. Approximately 12,800 years ago, right around the time Plato places the fall of Atlantis, the Earth was emerging from an ice age. Suddenly and violently, the planet was plunged back into a deep freeze for a period of 200 years. This period is known as the Younger Dryas. The cause, according to a group of prominent scientists, was a cosmic impact. Their theory posits that a fragmented comet or asteroid struck the Earth's atmosphere, exploding in a series of airbursts over multiple continents, including North America and, crucially for our story, parts of Africa. The effects would have been apocalyptic. The airbursts would have triggered massive wildfires across the globe, melting ice sheets and glaciers in an instant. This would have released colossal volumes of fresh water into the oceans, disrupting global ocean currents and causing the dramatic cooling of the Younger Dryas. But, more directly, for a civilization like the one potentially at the Richat structure, it would have meant a barrage of superheated debris, continent-spanning earthquakes far beyond anything recorded in history, and most devastatingly, mega tsunamis. A tsunami generated by such an impact, striking the Atlantic coast of Africa, would have traveled hundreds of miles inland, especially if the land was already a green, fertile plain. This provides the exact mechanism for the destruction. Plato described a civilization, advanced and powerful, obliterated in a day and night by fire from the sky, world-shattering earthquakes, and floods of biblical scale. A theory is only as good as its evidence. So, what have we actually found at the Richat structure that suggests a human civilization? The answer is mounting, and it is compelling. While extensive excavation has yet to be undertaken, surface surveys have revealed a treasure trove of archaeological anomalies. Hundreds of ancient stone artifacts have been found scattered across the site, tools, spear points, and grinding stones that date back to the Neolithic period, proving human occupation in the distant past. More strikingly, there are the remains of what appear to be large, man-made structures. There are mounds and formations that look suspiciously like the eroded foundations of buildings and walls. Most convincing are the numerous examples of a rock type that does not naturally occur in the area, suggesting it was transported there. Even more tantalizing are the accounts of mounds containing a black, vitrified material, which could be the result of an intensely hot, sudden fire, the kind of heat generated by a cosmic airburst. Furthermore, the local topography shows clear signs of ancient water erosion. with channels that look engineered rather than natural, aligning perfectly with Plato's description of the canal system that connected the concentric rings of the city to the sea. This is not just a random geological formation. It is a site that shows clear and prolonged human activity, and its layout is a mirror image of the legendary capital of Atlantis. The physical evidence on the ground is beginning to confirm what the geological and historical theories have been suggesting. The story of Atlantis does not exist in a vacuum. If a civilization of such scale and influence was truly wiped out in a global cataclysm, its memory would be seared into the collective psyche of humanity. And indeed, when we look at the world's oldest cultures, we find a common haunting thread, the story of a great flood. It is the centerpiece of the Epic of Gilgamesh from Mesopotamia. It is the story of Noah in the Hebrew Bible. The ancient Greeks had the myth of Deucalion. The Hindus have the tale of Manu. Cultures from the Americas to Australia have their own versions of a world-destroying deluge sent by gods to punish a corrupt humanity. For centuries, these have been treated as separate, isolated myths. But what if they are all fragmented memories of the same real historical event? The Younger Dryas impact and its resultant mega-tsunamis and climate chaos provide a plausible global basis for these stories. The Atlanteans, as described by Plato, were a seafaring people who likely had contact with other cultures around the Atlantic and Mediterranean. The destruction of their empire would have sent shockwaves, both literal and cultural, across the prehistoric world. Survivors, fleeing the drowned kingdom, would have carried their knowledge and their traumatic stories with them to Egypt, to Mesopotamia, to the Americas. These stories, over millennia, would have been adapted and incorporated into local cultures, becoming the flood myths we know today. The legend of Atlantis, therefore, is not just the story of one lost civilization. It is the root memory of a global catastrophe that reshaped human history and reset the course of civilization itself. What made Atlantis so special? Plato described them as possessing a technology and knowledge far beyond their neighbors. But what does that mean in practical terms? We are not necessarily talking about laser beams and flying machines, but about a mastery of the natural world that would have seemed like magic to the simpler, emerging cultures of the time. Their most obvious skill was in megalithic engineering and water management. The precise concentric rings and canals of their capital city represent a profound understanding of geometry, hydrology, and large-scale construction. This knowledge is echoed in other ancient megalithic sites around the world that seem to appear suddenly in the archaeological record. Places like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, with its massive, intricately carved stone pillars erected by hunter-gatherers, which defies conventional historical timelines. Did the survivors of Atlantis, these master builders, spread their knowledge? Furthermore, Plato mentions the mysterious metal, orichalcum, which he says glowed with a red light, while its exact nature is unknown. Alloys with unusual properties are not beyond the realm of possibility for a sophisticated metallurgical society. Their true advancement may have been in energy. Some theorists suggest they harnessed geothermal energy from the earth, or the power of flowing water, or even atmospheric electricity. This is speculative, but it provides a framework for understanding how they could have achieved such architectural marvels. Their advanced nature may have been a profound harmony with natural laws, a knowledge that was lost when their civilization was erased from the earth. With all this compelling evidence, why is the existence of Atlantis not taught in history books? Why does mainstream archaeology and history remain so deeply skeptical? The resistance is rooted in a fundamental principle of modern archaeology, the aversion to catastrophism. The prevailing view of human history is one of gradual, linear progress, from simple hunter-gatherers to complex agricultural societies, slowly and steadily. The idea of a sophisticated, prehistoric civilization that was wiped out by a sudden catastrophe disrupts this entire model. It introduces a chaotic, unpredictable element into the neat timeline of human development. Furthermore, the field has been plagued by centuries of fantastical claims, pseudoscience, and sheer fantasy attached to the name Atlantis, making any serious academic wary of associating themselves with the topic. It has become a taboo, a career ender. The evidence, however, is now becoming too loud to ignore. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, once ridiculed, is now gaining significant traction with new studies and evidence published in major scientific journals. The geological anomalies it cites, like the Richet structure, are tangible and measurable. The paradigm is shifting, but slowly. It takes time for established institutions to accept a new narrative that completely overturns the old. We are witnessing the painful, exciting, and controversial birth of a new understanding of our past, where the lines between myth and history are being irrevocably blurred. So, after this journey through ancient texts, geological cataclysms, and archaeological anomalies, what is the final undeniable conclusion? The cumulative evidence is overwhelming. The Richet structure in Mauritania is the most likely candidate for the capital city of Atlantis, matching Plato's description with a degree of accuracy that no other proposed site can claim. The cataclysm that destroyed, it was almost certainly the series of cosmic impacts that triggered the Younger Dryas period, an event that explains the global flood myths and the simultaneous collapse of large mammalian species. The Minoan eruption of Thera was likely a later, smaller echo of this same catastrophic pattern, a memory that became conflated with the older, grander story of Atlantis over the centuries. The final result, the truth we can now state with confidence, is this. Atlantis was real. It was not a continent in the middle of the Atlantic, but a sophisticated, maritime civilization centered in what is now the Sahara Desert, a green and thriving paradise until it was obliterated 12,000 years ago by a global disaster. This discovery changes everything. It means human history is far older, far more dramatic, and far more cyclical than we ever imagined. We are not on a steady climb upward, but are the survivors of a forgotten age, rebuilding atop the ruins of a world that was lost. The story of Atlantis is no longer a myth. It is our story. It is a warning from our distant ancestors about the fragility of civilization in the face of planetary forces, and a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity that rose from the ashes to begin again. The lost civilization has been found, and in finding it, we have found a missing piece of ourselves.